today, but that's all right because God is still good. That's all right. 1995, that year shouldn't seem like it's that long ago, but it is. It just was many years ago. Apollo 13, remember that movie, Tom Hanks, back when he had black hair, he was starring in that, and that was what's going on in the theaters. The first CGI movie, completely computer-generated graphics, Toy Story, that was also in theaters. eBay, remember eBay? It started its online auction and shopping website that year where someone actually paid 30 grand for one of William Shatner's kidney stones. I joke you not. Great deal if you ask me, but no one's asking me. That was the year that DVDs began replacing VHS tapes. Remember VHS? It was awesome. The Grateful Dead, that band, broke up that year. And Michael Jordan announced that he was returning, thank goodness, to basketball, leaving behind his childhood dream of playing professional baseball and taking that year off to make Space Jam, which we are grateful for as well. I think he made the right choice going back to basketball. That's just me. But in the spring of that year, 1995, there was also a wedding that happened. It was the 6th of May, and a very young couple tied the knot that day, followed by a delicious home-cooked meal made from roast beef and potatoes and all that. And there was some pizza ordered as well, another story there. And that night concluded with there being 6 inches of snow on the ground just a few weeks before the beginning of summer. Awesome living in Canada, isn't it? It was a wonderful day. It was a very memorable day. And that day began the wedded bliss of Francine and my life together. Boy, we were so young back then. There wasn't a gray hair on our heads. My beard even was completely dark, unlike it is now when I let it grow. Francine that day, she was gorgeous. Not like she ever isn't, she doesn't need a fancy dress or anything to look gorgeous. But we were just a few years out of high school, and we thought we knew everything. We were ready to take on the world together, and boy, we were so dumb. We were so green, we didn't know anything, we didn't understand anything the way the world worked whatsoever. But as foolish as those 2 kids were that day, they have stuck together, they made it work, and we still have so much to learn, don't we? We still have so much to learn, still do. To learn about what real love is, what self-sacrificial love that chooses to put that other person first. Because marriage, it's not an easy thing. In fact, it is quite hard to make it work. But the blessings that come with it are absolutely worth it. But they come in time and with a ton of effort. And so anytime now I do a wedding, I try to bestow just one piece of advice to the happy couple. Because they're putting so much time, so much effort into this wedding day, trying to make their special day oh so perfect. And they're spending a lot of money. They're putting hours and days and months into planning into this day to pull it off just right. But what I try to instill in them is this truth. Now, I know I'm just a guy, okay? But I tell them, the wedding is just a day, all right? And at the end of it, as long as that paper is signed and in the mail, the job is done. They are Mr. and Mrs. But I know a lot of work has been put into that day. That was the easy part. The daily decision now to continue the work and put the effort into making their marriage a blessing, that's something they would now have to do for every day for the rest of their lives together. Now, Francine and I, we have not always been perfect. Far from it, in fact. But on that wintry, springish day in the mid-90s, we made promises to each other and to God, to love and cherish and honor. And when things are good, when things are not so good. And people, I know, a lot of people said that we were way way too young. And you know something? We probably were. But on that day, I picked up a microphone and I sang a song to my bride and my best friend, and I meant every word of it. Wise men say, only fools rush in. But I can't help falling in love with you. Man, I had the crowd eating out of my hand. They were taking pictures. They were standing up and cheering. Pretty sure some ladies were swooning that day, saddened that I was now taken. Wise men and women say quite a lot, don't they? Because they have some experience in the world. They've succeeded in many parts of life where many of us attempt to. They have made lots of money. They've lived comfortably. They've climbed the ladder of success. They've even wrote a book to talk about it. Now, our world teaches us a definition of the word wisdom, and we tend to believe it. But as we jump back into our series from the book of James, found in our New Testaments, the half-brother of Jesus and leader of the early church, James teaches us a very different concept of what being wise truly is. And if we were to give it a try, whether we are a Jesus follower or not, we would make a massive impact around us. We pick up in James chapter 3, verse 13. Where it says, if you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you are bitterly jealous and there's selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For whether there is jealousy and wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. It's interesting. James here connects being wise with being able to understand the ways of God. It's fascinating today. Western culture where we live, it's one of the only cultures in the world that does not revere age. If you travel around the globe, you will discover quickly that living a long life is generally viewed as a blessing by others. And if you are healthy and well enough to make it to old age, because of those many years of experience and knowledge, you are actually respected and listened to. There's a proverb in the Old Testament that says that gray hair is a crown of splendor. It's attained by a righteous life. It's interesting. It's a crown, the Bible says, not a curse, meant to be shamed and hidden. But here in our culture, youth is what's desired, right? We want to stay young, so we see all these people, all these old men and old women wearing teenager-style clothes and dyeing their hair to try to fool everyone, right? Because we're embarrassed by age. It's frowned upon. People will see wrinkles in their skin, and they will go and they'll get Botox injections to temporarily hide them. Botox is derived from a bacteria that comes from the same toxin that causes a type of food poisoning called botulism. Perhaps you've heard of it. It can kill you a lot. And people use it to cover up their crinkles in their face. And so I question the wisdom in decisions like this, but that's how desperate we are to avoid aging, right? Now I look at someone who's got a crow's feet around their eyes and I think how much they have laughed and smiled in life. What a blessing. But with age comes experience, comes understanding. It doesn't necessarily come. There's plenty of older people in the world who are still very foolish and ignorant about many things. But generally speaking, if we let God soften our hearts And we open our eyes and our ears to see, to hear what he has to teach us. Time has a way of showing us a few things, doesn't it? Patience, understanding. We learn to listen more than we speak. And specifically with what James talks about today, wisdom from God actually teaches us to live honorably, to do good with our lives for others, and we learn this thing called humility. So often people will try and have some kind of legacy so they'll be remembered by others who come after them. And so they'll use maybe their money, their position, their clout to invest in having their name remembered, maybe a building named after them. Apparently, did you know this? Apparently downtown Charlottetown, there is this giant head on top of one of the buildings down there to remember a man named Owen Conley, all right? He was a prominent businessman in the 1800s, kind of this rags to riches story where he came from nothing, became one of the wealthiest people on PEI at the time. And he wanted a legacy, and I guess he got it, all right? Hannah told me about this head on top of the building down there. She showed it to me. I've lived in Charlottetown for almost half a century. I've never noticed this head up there before. I don't know if you have. I know where you're going this afternoon to go look for this giant head. But I've never noticed it. But what James describes for us here as godly wisdom is more about thinking less of ourselves and our legacy and learning to think about others first. And humility is a lesson we learn over time. Another perk about getting older. But it's an attractive quality, isn't it? Not very often you'll hear someone say, boy, that guy is such an arrogant jerk. I wish I could be more like him. No. Jealousy and selfish ambition, while it can happen so easily within our hearts, right? They are also not very appealing traits. Now, there's nothing wrong with some ambition in life. It's great when I see kids, putting together a lemonade stand, sitting out there trying to earn some money in the summertime. Because kids aren't meant to sit around and play video games all day and snap their friends all day, right? So getting out and getting a job in the summer, that's a great ambition. It should be encouraged. Because wanting to work hard and to learn new things, that's very positive. Without ambitious people, we'd all still be driving horses and buggies around, right? Going to the bathroom outside and still using flip phones, right? Ambition helps us make the world a better place. They discovered that 300 million-year-old fossil there. You saw that? Some PEI guy, something like that. They knew it was 300 million years old because the fossil was holding a flip phone still. That's how they did it. Just saying. Ambition helps us make the world a better place. But when it's only about us, how it can make us happier in life, more popular maybe, that's when it becomes this negative trait. But when you work hard, not just to help others maybe. We go and do that. We make our place of employment a great place to be, but instead we do it to advance our own credentials, right? To get higher up the corporate ladder, to make more money. But with that, godly wisdom steps in and says, what about this? What if you used your authority instead to help others, right? To make their jobs better, less stressful. What would it look like if you leveraged what you had to make your workplace a great place to be? I mean, so many businesses, they're run like this, from the top down, right? There's this hierarchical structure when a handful of people at the top, they have the most power. They make the most money. And those places, they make a ton of dough. And they are often very well known in the corporate world. But most of those places do not have employees who work there, the employees who do most of the work, of course, who are content in their jobs and who would encourage others to come work for this great, ambitious company. Because this kind of structure leads to jealousy and selfish ambition. Where those towards the bottom of the ladder, they dream about climbing up it, not to make the business a better place to be, but so that they will have the power and the money and the minions to do their bidding. But this kind of thinking, James says, it's earthly, it's unspiritual, even demonic. There's a lot of things I will jokingly say are from the devil. Humidity, right? Cats, no offense to you cat people. Mosquitoes, slow drivers, sleepovers. Tell you, I never understood when my friends wanted me to come and sleep on their floor when I could go home and sleep in my own bed. I just never understood that. But James, he brings it down and makes it real and says that things like jealousy and selfishness, that is what brings about disorder and evil. Because what James learned from Jesus was that our relationships with people, they are what are incredibly important. If we truly want to bring order and goodness to our world, how we relate to and connect with others, that is the key. And while the most natural thing for us to do is to follow the world's wisdom, to think about ourselves first, we're reminded here about what Jesus said. He said, love your neighbor as yourself. As much as you want to be loved and respected by others, you make sure you do that first towards them. James continues. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism. It is always sincere. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. It's interesting. Conventional wisdom today, it frowns upon getting married young, right? We place today importance on education, on completing our careers before something God has designed to be a very good thing. In all of creation, God said everything was good. The only thing that was not good was that man was alone. Our culture promotes individuality, right? Making sure that we make ourselves happy first and foremost. And when we finally think about settling down and getting married, that same wisdom tells us to slow things down more, and instead of going through with things, you should, just live together first. After all, we're told, we never buy a car without first taking it for a test drive. Why wouldn't you make sure that you and a potential spouse click where you need to click? Now, I get the whole test drive analogy. I was looking at the Toyota CHR for a little while, that crossover vehicle, a little bit bigger than a sedan, but still small enough to be good on fuel. Plus, looking at them online on the road, I just love the look. They were weird looking. They're quirky looking vehicles with these funky curves, kind of like me. And door handles practically up on the roof to open the back door. I like weird things, right? But when I finally drove one, it felt not right. It felt kind of small. And then I hopped into my RAV4 and I never looked back. So I get that kind of wisdom. Except that kind of wisdom has not proved itself in the real world. Because statistically, people who live together before they get married, they tend to give up and split up more and faster than those who don't. It's so fascinating. There's all sorts of theories as to why. Often people who do this, they'll do it with more than one person, so they look at the relationship as one that they can just get rid of quickly if they're not happy. But at the end of the day, that kind of thinking, it's backwards to the way God says that we should think. The way he made things to work best in his wisdom. Because thinking like that says, you are the most important person in the relationship, right? You want to make sure that you are satisfied in your potential purchase. But a marriage based on godly wisdom is one that helps us think. I need to defer. I need to yield my needs. Man. I mean, I wish I could say that Francine and I have always put this into practice, that we spend our time in this holy submission competition where we constantly seek ways out to defer to each other, to always think about what pleases each other first and foremost. You know, I come home every day and she's wearing her Spock ears, excited about watching a couple episodes of Strange New Worlds, right? Or she walks in and the house is immaculate, there's flowers in a vase on the table, dinner's prepared with no dishes in the sink. And real world, right? Because we are both works in progress, and thinking about each other first will always be a challenge for as long as the Lord lets us be together. But one of the reasons we have stayed together is not because I'm ruggedly handsome and do a phenomenal Elvis impersonation. It's because we both follow Jesus. And we have decided that his way is better than the world's way. And since he loved others first and changed the world because of that, we need to learn daily how we do that with each other. That is true in marriage, and my friends, that is equally true in every relationship we have in life. At work, with our family, our friends, our neighbors around us, everyone. Because when we learn to be wise and put others first, when we yield our own personalities and desires, when we take our own resources and all that we have earned and we generously give to help others, we reflect God's wisdom to them. And we reflect Jesus' love as well. And that is a very attractive thing. Let's pray. Thank you, Father, for this wisdom, this advice from your servant James, and thank you for sending us this wisdom, God, that you gave to us through Jesus. I pray that you would help us always, every day, as works in progress that we are, in life and every relationship that we have, in our marriages, in our families, our friends, or just the people who are around us every day through work and the people we connect with. That every day we would become more like Jesus, and they would begin to see your wisdom and his love shining out of us, not because we're such wonderful people, but Father, because you are changing us bit by bit into the people you desire us to be. Help us to be wise in that, Father, to get ourselves out of the way and show your love there. In Jesus' name, amen.